Welcome to Insights. I'm Adam Rivers.
And I'm Sarah Collins. In this episode, we'll reflect carefully on the Qur'an, verse by verse, focusing on wording, context, and coherence. So just as a quick recap of our journey through the revelation so far, in our last episode, we explored that incredibly tense sort of cosmic moment when the angels were first told about the creation of a human successor. And, that led to their famous question about free will because they looked at the human design and immediately worried about the potential for corruption and bloodshed on Earth.
Right. Which brings us perfectly to the response in the second chapter, specifically verse 33. Let me just read the translation for you really quickly. He said, "O Adam, inform them of their names." And when he had informed them of their names, he said, "Did I not tell you that I know the unseen of the heavens and the earth, and I know what you reveal and what you used to conceal?" So I want to pose a really simple question to you, the listener, right up front. What is genuinely happening on this cosmic stage? Because to actually grasp this, we have to completely abandon those purely historical or inherited views that just treat this as an ancient story. This isn't just a tale, It actually establishes the entire methodology of human knowledge. The angels were basically looking at our material makeup and expecting violence, but human superiority, as is laid out right here in the Revelation, isn't about physical power. It's not about being sinless either. It is entirely about cognitive capacity. It's about the mind.
That dynamic actually reminds me of a very modern corporate scenario. Like, imagine a CEO brings in this completely unconventional, high-risk new hire, right? And the existing executive team is super skeptical. They look at this new person's rough background, maybe their lack of traditional polish, and they think, this person is going to ruin our culture. They're going to cause chaos. But instead of the CEO just, pounding the table and demanding compliance through pure authority, they do a practical demonstration. They put the new hire in front of a whiteboard to solve a really complex algorithm that literally no one else in the room could figure out. So by doing that, they practically demonstrate the hire's unique skills to the skeptical team. Is that essentially what the revelation is showing us here?
Yeah, that is a phenomenal way to visualize it. Because the angel's previous question about human bloodshed, it wasn't a rebellion, right? It was a genuine quest for hidden wisdom based on observing our dense material nature. And God's response wasn't just to exert absolute authority to shut them down. He provided a practical demonstration. He gave them tangible evidence. And by doing this, God established that true certainty actually requires proof, meaning humans shouldn't just blindly follow empty inherited rituals.
Wait, hold on. I want to make sure I'm fully grasping the weight of that. Are you saying the revelation is actually telling us not to just blindly follow tradition?
It absolutely is.
Right.
I mean, if the Creator provided practical, logical evidence to the angels' beings of pure light and obedience, then how can we justify basing our lives on blind indoctrination? We are meant to seek evidence, to demand proof, and to actively refuse the mindless repetition of inherited customs.
Wow. That completely shifts the paradigm of how a person should interact with their own belief system. It demands active participation. So if this was a practical demonstration of intellect meant to establish our worth, how exactly did that unfold? Like, what is the profound significance behind the specific command God gave in that moment?
Well, let me throw a scenario back at you. Think about the difference between someone standing at a podium just reading a grocery list or some municipal budget updates versus a lead researcher stepping up to announce a verified scientific breakthrough that cures a global disease. Which one fundamentally alters reality for you? When we look at the precise wording in the Quran, God tells Adam to inform them of their names. And the Arabic word used is anbihum. This is so crucial because it doesn't use standard vocabulary for casual chatting. It uses a word from the root naba, which means paradigm-shifting, monumental news. It shares the same root as nabi, meaning prophet. Adam wasn't just reciting raw data here. He was delivering a revelation that would completely shatter the angels' preconceptions about what physical beings could do.
Oh, I see. So the mechanism of communication wasn't just data transfer. It was closer to dropping a conceptual bombshell. It makes me think of the moment a physicist finally proves a theory that rewrites the fundamental laws of gravity. You don't just chat about a discovery like that over coffee. You deliver an announcement that forces every expert in the room to rebuild their understanding of physics from the ground up. Does the language imply that Adam's delivery carried that kind of reality-bending weight?
Precisely. Adam was delivering a revelation that would shatter their entire set of preconceptions about what material creatures were capable of. The wording proves this was an overwhelming display of cognitive dominance. What's fascinating is that this act of informing didn't just add a new trivia fact to their mental database. It completely dismantled their assumption that a creature made of clay was forever limited to primitive instincts. And just by speaking, Adam definitively destroyed their fundamental understanding of the universe.
Wait, simply through speaking. Are you telling me that just through articulating these names, Adam completely destroyed the angels' fundamental understanding of how the universe was supposed to operate?
Yes, because it wasn't just the physical act of speech. It was the revelation of an entirely new dimension of existence, the dimension of conceptual intelligence. Adam performed an act of making the unknown intimately known, proving the human mind was meticulously designed to decode the universe, not just exist in it.
That naturally leads to a massive question, though. If this information was so shattering, what exactly were these names that carried so much weight? How do we understand what Adam was actually articulating?
Consider this what happens inside your mind when you finally put a precise name to a really complex psychological emotion you've struggled with for years. When you look at the phrase "of their names" by Asmahim, we have to dismantle the simplistic view that God just taught Adam physical labels, like pointing and saying, "This is a rock." The Arabic root of name, which is ism, comes from the concept of elevation, or a symbol. It represents concepts, universal laws, categorizations, and the profound power of abstract thought. It's the ability to synthesize data and build cumulative knowledge.
That distinction is absolutely vital. It's the difference between a toddler pointing at a bird in the sky and saying bird versus, an aeronautical engineer observing that same bird and mapping out the mathematical principles of aerodynamics and lift. If you think about human progress, we didn't get to where we are just by pointing at physical objects. We went from categorizing base elements to building spaceships because we abstract and innovate beyond what is directly in front of us.
Exactly. And that mechanism of innovation is what separates human nature from angelic nature here. Angels are beings of light, programmed for absolute obedience and constant praise, but they inherently lack epistemological generation, the ability to innovate conceptually. Humans possess this divine spark of conceptualization. And because of this, the revelation actually establishes scientific research and conceptual development as the foundational human honor, while harshly condemning nations that rely on ignorance and mindless rituals.
Wait, I need to pause you right there. We so often treat scientific inquiry and religious devotion as completely separate things. Are you actually stating that the revelation literally condemns relying on mindless religious rituals at the expense of scientific development?
Without a shadow of a doubt.
Oh.
When a society abandons research and stops developing new concepts, it is actively abandoning the very trait that justified human existence to the angels in the first place. Relying merely on outward, mindless rituals while leaving the intellect dormant is a direct betrayal of this cosmic mandate.
Wow. Okay, so if this cognitive display was so incredibly profound, how quickly did the angels catch on? What was the immediate, visceral reaction to this unprecedented display of human intellect?
Well, let me ask you, how does society usually judge someone's worth before they've even opened their mouth? We look at their origin, their race, their class, right? The wording in the Qur'an uses a very specific prefix, fi, which translates to "so when he informed them." In Arabic grammar, this prefix implies sudden immediacy. Adam didn't struggle or consult notes. He proved his latent ability instantly. The angels realized in a flash that this creature, despite being formed from heavy clay, held immense cognitive power.
It's like watching a young musical prodigy from a severely disadvantaged background walk into a room full of elite, highly skeptical critics. They initially judge the kid based on his unpolished clothes, the clay of his background, basically. But the second his fingers hit the keys of the piano, he instantly plays a flawless Mozart concerto. The prejudice doesn't slowly fade away over months of debate. It evaporates in an instant because the mathematics and beauty of the music prove a level of cognitive processing that cannot be faked.
That is a brilliant way to frame it. The absolute immediacy of Adam's response forced an involuntary paradigm shift among the angels, and this establishes a staggering precedent. True human value is measured entirely by intellectual production and moral consciousness. This single moment fundamentally destroys all classist or racist considerations of human worth.
Wait, are you saying this ancient cosmic event fundamentally obliterates racism and classism as valid ways to evaluate a human being?
It absolutely does. The revelation declares that evaluating people based on their physical lineage or race is a flawed, lower-level metric. When we revert to racism, we are regressing back to the angels' initial flawed assumption before they were enlightened by proof.
That is an incredibly powerful lens. So after this instantaneous proof is delivered, God says something specific about what he knows. How does the concept of the seen and the unseen factor into the angel's initial flawed judgment?
Think about a time you walked past a massive, chaotic construction site. Did you judge the mud and the noise without ever seeing the architect's final blueprint? In the Qur'an, God asked the angels, "Did I not tell you I know the unseen of the heavens and the earth?" The angels made their judgment based entirely on the seen, the physical clay, the base instincts, the inevitable bloodshed. But they completely missed the unseen, the long-term civilizational outcomes, the awe-inspiring medical breakthroughs, and the complex sciences humans would eventually produce.
It really is like looking at the mud and deafening noise of that construction site and complaining about the mess, completely unaware that the unseen blueprint is actually for a state-of-the-art research hospital that will save millions of lives. You're so hyper-focused on the dirt that you lack the imagination to see the civilization being constructed.
Exactly. The universe is full of hidden laws, and the human being is the specific tool designed to extract this unseen. God knows bloodshed will happen as the inevitable tax of granting free will, but the revelation makes it unequivocally clear that the cognitive and moral good will far outweigh that destructive tax. And because of this, the Qur'an forcefully rejects pessimistic, dark views of humanity as inherently evil or purely driven by sin.
Wait, hold on. I want to clarify this because it pushes against a lot of popular narratives. Are you telling me that the revelation is not fundamentally based on inherent corruption, but is actually fundamentally optimistic about our potential?
It is radically optimistic. It absolutely refuses to define our species by our harm. We are defined by our unique capacity to discover the unseen and bring order to the universe. Viewing humanity as a dark, fallen species contradicts the very reason the Creator defended our existence to the angels.
That gives such an empowering sense of purpose. But the verse doesn't end with just the seen and the unseen. God also explicitly mentions knowing what they reveal and what they used to conceal. In a realm of light and obedience, what does it actually mean for beings in this cosmic environment to conceal something?
Have you ever worked with someone who does everything right? Outwardly flawlessly follows the rules, but inwardly harbors a deep, toxic sense of superiority over everyone else. When we unpack the Arabic grammar, what you reveal is in the present continuous tense, while what you used to conceal is past continuous. The angels openly revealed their fear of bloodshed and their praise of God. But what were they hiding? The revelation hints they might have concealed a quiet entitlement to the role of successor simply because their worship was flawless and static.
Oh, that psychological dynamic makes perfect sense. It's like a veteran employee who has never broken a policy in 30 years feeling entitled to the CEO position just because of perfect attendance. And they harbor deep resentment when the board brings in an innovative outsider who might be unpolished, but who actually has the creative vision to navigate a complex market. The veteran thinks the baseline is obedience, but the baseline for leadership is actually dynamic vision.
That dynamic is spot on. But there is an even darker layer here. There was a foreign element hiding among the angels, Satan, or Iblis. He shared their outward environment and worship, but internally, he concealed a deep, festering arrogance and a racist ideology, believing he was superior because he was made of fire, while Adam was clay. God set up this entire cosmic stage specifically to expose this hidden toxic disease to the light.
Wait, I need to stop you there because the implications are staggering. Are you suggesting that this entire monumental event was basically a diagnostic test designed specifically to expose a hidden disease of racism within the angelic realm?
Yes, it functioned exactly like a diagnostic stress test. God's ultimate knowledge of what was concealed forced the situation to a critical breaking point. It definitively proves that the Creator is deeply concerned with the hidden diseases of the heart. Arrogance, racism, entitlement, not just the outward theatrical performance of piety.
So if outward perfection isn't enough to hide internal corruption, how does this tension between what we show and what we hide define the true battleground of our own daily existence?
Well, ask yourself this. If a surgical scalpel is perfectly sharp, does it matter how good the tool is if the hand holding it is entirely corrupted by malice? The overarching lesson here is about inner purity. Outward religious rituals or high social standing are absolutely meaningless if your inner self conceals hatred or an unearned sense of superiority. The true battleground is the brutal, constant internal work of purifying your own depths.
It's the ultimate dilemma of modern technology, right? You look at artificial intelligence or genetic engineering, these are incredible, mind-bending tools of knowledge. But structurally, they are neutral. If the human intent behind those tools is driven by unchecked greed or algorithmic supremacy, those brilliant tools just become weapons. Without a pure moral compass, advancing knowledge is actually terrifying.
And that perfectly brings us to the structural genius embedded in the revelation here. This single verse actually forms a perfect geometric equilateral triangle of human existence. First, you have knowledge and language, the tools. Second, you have the unseen of the heavens and the earth, the field of scientific exploration. And third, you have intention and the inner self represented by what we reveal and conceal. This third point is the crucial moral compass that prevents knowledge from becoming destructive.
Wait, I want to make sure I'm visualizing this correctly. Are you saying that the entire complex condition of human existence, our potential, our purpose, and our pitfalls, is mapped out perfectly in a geometric structure within this one single sentence?
It truly is mathematically elegant. If you have advanced knowledge but no moral purity, you get exploitation and weapons of mass destruction.
No.
If you have moral purity but ignore scientific knowledge, you stagnate and fail your purpose as a dynamic successor. You absolutely need all three sides of this triangle functioning together.
So if we need all three sides to maintain balance, what does this specific framework mean for how we, in the modern world, are actually supposed to approach acquiring knowledge?
If you are handed an ancient verified map to a hidden treasure, do you just frame the paper, memorize the lines, and sit comfortably in your living room? Or do you actually pack your bags and start walking into the wilderness? This verse completely obliterates the traditional views that lazily reduce religion to a list of dry, static commands. It provides a full, comprehensive epistemology. It shows the human mind is divinely prepped to generate concepts, completely refuting the demand for blind submission. If the angels were given logical proof, humans must boldly use their minds and not blindly surrender to inherited customs.
That makes me think of the stark difference between rote memorization in a failing educational system versus actually conducting a live experiment in a lab. A student can memorize the entire periodic table for a test, but they haven't learned anything about reality until they mix volatile chemicals and observe the reaction. Rote memorization is safe and passive, but actual experimentation generates real understanding.
And the collective failure to experiment is exactly the tragedy of civilizational stagnation we see throughout history. When communities like the Ummah in certain historical contexts stopped naming things, meaning they stopped discovering new scientific laws and started relying solely on ancient scholars, they effectively abandoned their core human mandate. Every single modern discovery in quantum physics or neuroscience is literally the act of uncovering a new name.
Wait, I want to clarify the stakes here because they sound incredibly high. Are you saying that abandoning the pursuit of scientific research is not just an intellectual failing, but a literal failure of our cosmic purpose?
Yes, literally. When we step back from rigorous scientific research, we voluntarily forfeit the secret of succession God originally placed in Adam. The revelation is actively pushing you to realize that exploring the physical world and peering through telescopes is a deeply spiritual obligation. It is the truest expression of our purpose.
But all of that science fundamentally relies on our ability to communicate complex ideas. How does the specific concept of language play into this grand exploration of the unseen world?
Let me pose a question about power dynamics. Why do insecure authoritarian political systems always try to control the press and censor speech if the truth is supposedly on their side? Language is an incredibly powerful tool. The verse highlights that human language isn't just animal communication for signaling danger. It is the key that allows us to breach the barrier of the unseen. It provides the framework to discuss abstract realities like justice, freedom, and ethics. This unique ability to abstract and conceptualize is what truly stunned the angelic audience.
That level of open dialogue is the hallmark of a truly confident system. It makes me think of a brilliant, highly secure university professor. When a student raises a skeptical, borderline disruptive question about the curriculum, the insecure teacher will panic and silence the student. But the confident teacher welcomes the disruption, engages in the dialogue, and uses evidence to prove their point, fully knowing the truth is robust enough to withstand scrutiny.
And that confident engagement is exactly the precedent set here by the Creator. God possessed the absolute power to silence the angel's questions with a single word. But he purposefully chose dialogue and evidence. This permanently establishes the freedom of expression and the right to question authority. It serves as a massive condemnation of any institution today that tries to ruthlessly suppress the questions or doubts of the youth under the guise of protecting the truth.
Wait, I just want to ensure we aren't stretching the application too far. Are you stating that this ancient cosmic dialogue actually functions as a direct structural critique of how corrupt modern institutions operate today?
By direct extension, absolutely. The entire conceptual framework of evaluating what is revealed outwardly versus what is concealed inwardly applies flawlessly to modern entities. Think about massive corporate or political institutions that project shiny PR campaigns about human rights, but secretly hide systemic corruption in their boardrooms. The Qur'an is actively trying to build a critical, skeptical awareness within you, training your mind to look past theatrical slogans and demand tangible proof.
I noticed something really interesting about the internal structure of the verse itself, though. It repeats the phrase their names. First, God commands it, saying, inform them of their names, and then it immediately says Adam informed them of their names. What is the mechanism behind that specific repetition? Why say it twice?
When someone is truly a master of their craft and entirely confident in their expertise, do they hesitate, clear their throat, and stumble over their words? Or do they step right up to the microphone and deliver? The repetition of their names is not casual linguistic filler. It is intense, calculated rhetorical emphasis. It proves structurally that Adam didn't hesitate for a fraction of a second. It demonstrates that human nature, in its uncorrupted form, is fundamentally eager to receive complex knowledge and practice it immediately.
It's so incredibly easy to get distracted from that core message, though. It's like walking into the Louvre to see a breathtaking Renaissance masterpiece. But instead of absorbing the profound beauty, you spend the entire afternoon arguing aggressively about what specific brand of horsehair the painter might have used for their brush. You completely miss the profound meaning because you are obsessed with irrelevant trivia.
That is a flawless analogy for how so many people unfortunately approached reading the Quran. Approaching the revelation through this high-level focus on intellect completely frees the mind from the trap of Israeliyat, which are unfounded historical myths and folk tales that have crept into the commentary over centuries. People get utterly obsessed with arguing about the exact shape of the leaves on the tree, or the specific mineral color of the clay Adam was formed from. Wait, I need to pause here because this is a huge shift in how things are normally studied. Are you saying that getting bogged down in those historical details and lore is actively making us intellectually poorer and making us miss the point? Yes. It is highly distracting and intellectually reductive. Those mythological details cloud the mind and pull your attention completely away from the primary objective of the revelation, which is to deeply understand the human being as a cognitive and moral agent. We have to violently clear away those distracting inherited myths to actually see the sheer power of the intellect being celebrated here.
So, if we manage to clear away all the trivial noise and the heavy inherited baggage, what is the ultimate unifying conclusion of all this for humanity? Where does this intricate cosmic scene leave us as individuals navigating the world today?
If you were suddenly handed the literal keys to a staggeringly powerful machine, the keys to the universe, what would be the very first instruction you would desperately need to ensure you didn't accidentally destroy yourself? The amazing thing is how this ancient verse connects flawlessly to the very first words ever revealed to Prophet Muhammad centuries later. Read in the name of your Lord. That command to read reawakens this exact cosmic secret placed in Adam. We are commanded to explore the universe and relentlessly generate knowledge, but we must do it in the name of the Lord, meaning we must attach a rigorous divine moral direction to our scientific pursuits to avoid the exact bloodshed the angels feared.
It's like taking a 1,000,000-horsepower engine and finally attaching it to the correct steering wheel and navigation system. The engine is our raw intellect and technological prowess. If you just let that engine run wild without the steering wheel of deep moral integrity, it will crash and destroy everything. But if it is guided properly by pure intention, that same engine can literally take humanity to the stars.
Exactly. And that is why this verse operates as the ultimate, definitive human charter. It shows us God's incredible trust in our species. God didn't deny our deep flaws, but he decisively demonstrated that our massive cognitive potential heavily outweighs our darkest mistakes. We have to start viewing ourselves and each other through this divine lens of immense potential, rather than constantly condemning each other for our inevitable failures.
Wait, let me process the magnitude of that optimism. Are you saying that despite the Creator knowing full well the extent of the wars and destruction we would cause throughout history, the Revelation still firmly declares that our potential for discovery and good is fundamentally greater?
Yes. This verse is a continuous, living cognitive and moral constitution. It demands that you actively use your reason, fiercely reject blind tradition, explore the universe scientifically, and relentlessly purify your inner self. It's a continuous mandate to rebuild human civilization over and over again on the solid foundation of both towering intellect and profoundly pure intention.
Thank you for walking us through that incredibly rich, multi-layered perspective. It really does change everything about how we view the mechanics of our own minds and our place in the world. So, to bring all of these profound threads together, humanity's true, undeniable worth lies entirely in our unique capacity for conceptualization, language, and knowledge. Blind tradition, rote memorization, and empty rituals are firmly rejected by the revelation in favor of rigorous evidence and practical proof. And our greatest cosmic duty is to continuously, fearlessly explore the unseen laws of the universe, to innovate and to discover, all while fiercely maintaining a pure, morally grounded inner compass. So I want to leave you with this final thought to process. If you were put on trial today and asked to justify your potential to the universe, are you currently relying on the seen of your past mistakes and background, or are you actively building the unseen of the knowledge and moral character you have yet to achieve? That's it for this episode of Insights. If you found this reflection helpful, follow the show and join us next time as we continue verse by verse in the Quran. Until then, take one idea from this verse into your day.